Crafters, it's Cynthia. Welcome to another Simon Says Stamp card kit video, and this time I am doing the February of 2018 kit called A Colorful Crafty Life. And this beautiful kit comes with this little helpful sheet which gives you 6 different samples, and then it'll give you a detailed list of everything in the kit. So this is an exclusive Simon stamp set called Crafty Friend. And you can see that you get some strip stamps and also little images and a bunch of different sentiments. So this is going to be a very handy stamp set. And then you get 3 envelopes. You get a mint and 2 metallic envelopes, one of them in burnt orange and the other one in bronze. And you do get a sheet of the Tim Holtz watercolor paper. And here are some of the Daniel Smith watercolors, and you'll get 6 different colors. You can see that I wet them a little bit and pulled out the color just so that you can see some little samples of the palette. Then you get a water brush, and this one is really nice with a good size brush head and a nice long barrel to hold your water. So you just unscrew that, fill it with water, and screw it closed again, and you're ready to paint. Then you get this wonderful little twiggy curved blade scissors, and these are great for just tucking into your crafting bag, maybe into your purse, and just have them on the go. But they're really nice. And then you get the Studio Katya pink, what is that called? Cupid's Kiss crystal mix, which is very pretty. And here are some Prima wood embellishment pieces, and mine were all cameras, and then I did get one little dress form, and I will end up using 4 out of the 5 of those images. And then the papers that you're going to get, you get 12 sheets of Echo Park's I'd Rather Be Crafting 6x6 paper pack. And this pack is wonderful. I love the colors in these papers. And they're double-sided, as you can see. And having 12 sheets is really quite a bit. You'd be surprised at how many different cards you can really make. As long as you save your scraps and use every bit that you can. And then you're going to get a couple of Tim Holtz embossing folders, and that one there is called, let's see if I can find it. Oh, I don't know. Gridlock, there you go. And then the other one is called Matrix. And then it has the typical distressed look that most of the Tim Holtz products have, which is actually kind of fun because all my other embossing folders are very perfect. So it's kind of nice to have something whimsical. And then you can see here I went ahead and just made some samples so you can see. And don't forget that you can use both sides of your embossed pieces. So depending on your project, you get to pick which side you want to use. And then you get some really nice pieces of cardstock. There's Simon's Burnt Orange, 120 weight white, and a sheet of slate, a sheet of banana, and Audrey Blue, which is one of my very favorites. And then you also get this wonderful craft tacky glue from Simon. And this glue is really, really nice because it kind of has a drier, more paste-like consistency, which I really like. You just cut the tip off to create the opening. And there's also a little tab inside that seals it. So it keeps it fresh until the first time you use it. So for card number 1, I'm using a side folding A2 card base, and I have a piece here of the Audrey Blue that is cut full size, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm just going to put that down on the base. And here's a piece of the pattern paper in this really cute little cross-stitched orange. And this is a 1/4 inch smaller on each side, so I'm putting that one down. And then I have another piece of this nice sewing paper, and it's actually the same size as the orange, but you'll see what I'm going to do. So I went ahead and stamped that stitched line stamp in some black ink, and now I'm going to stamp those little scissors from the stamp set. And I'm just using a scrap piece of cardstock that's a little bit thinner. I didn't want to use the 120 for something so small. And now I'm just going to heat emboss it in clear, which is really going to make that black pop. I love using those two together. Now I'm just going to go ahead and fussy cut those little scissors, and I'm using my favorite little Fiskars trimmers. And I mean, it took me, you know, just one time of using them to practice, and ever since then I use them every single time I'm fussy cutting. So it just, after a very small learning curve, they're going to start feeling very comfortable in your hand, and they're super easy to use. Now I'm going to go ahead and just carefully trim just very slightly above that dashed line. And then I'm just going to fold that edge back, and it'll reveal that adorable button pattern underneath. And now when I lay it down, you're going to see that pretty orange paper peeking through. I want to make sure to get tape all along every single edge because I don't want it to lift at all. And if you wanted to conserve that orange paper, you could have just put a smaller piece behind the pattern paper, but I just went ahead and used a full-size piece. And now I'm using just a little triangle of foam tape, and that's going to hold back that panel, or that little flap, for me. And now I'm using the Simon tacky glue, and you can see how nice it is. You get such a controlled amount, which is great for adding small embellishments, and yet it's a very strong adhesive. So just a little bit of padding and those scissors are going to be there for life. So now I took a little circle of Audrey blue, and in my collection I had this adorable circle saying stamp set from Simon, and I don't reach for this often enough. I love that stamp set. I really need to use it more. So this one just says hello there over and over again around that circle, and again you saw me heat embossing it. And I just want to lift that up a little bit so there's more foam tape. So there is the dress form little wood veneer piece. And again, I can get perfectly sized tiny dots of that adhesive all over the back. And once that dries solid, that little piece is not going to go anywhere. And that is card number 1. So card number 2, I'm starting out with a piece of that slate cardstock, and I'm going to use the thanks stamp from the set. And what I went ahead and did for this particular card kit, I actually took all of the sheets of cardstock, even the white, and I just cut each one of those pieces into 4 pieces, and they each measure 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And that actually worked out really, really well, because if I needed a piece that size, I already had them cut, and I never want to use the colored cardstocks for card bases. I know plenty of people do, and of course it looks lovely, but I just prefer to use those cardstocks as accents on all of my cards, and then just using white card bases. So now you could see that I was using my Versamark sticky ink, which is my preferred embossing ink, and now I'm using my favorite Hero Arts white embossing powder. And you'll see later that's not the most perfect application, but I don't really mind. With the white, sometimes it's hard to get things, you know, every tiny speck of stray powder off your project, but I don't worry about it. And now I'm taking, that strip is just a little strip of pattern paper. One of the solid colors is such a beautiful blue. So I'm just taking a little, what is that, probably a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch size strip, and I'm just going to run it along to kind of help separate the sentiment a little bit. And then I really wanted to use this darling camera paper, so I cut a piece that's going to cover the top portion of that slate cardstock. And now I'm just kind of laying out my cameras how I want them to be. So I'm going to have all 3 of them on this card. And I'm taking a circle die from my craft stash, and I wanted something that was just a very tiny bit smaller than the cameras. So you can see I've cut it out 3 different times, and that piece of paper is just going to get attached flat down to the cardstock. And again, I am using that wonderful tacky glue. I can tell that that is going to become a favorite of mine for sure. Every time I try to put an adhesive in one of those small bottles, I know it's a real popular thing to do, but I just have the worst time with that. My tips always get clogged. Sometimes the adhesive is somehow so thick it doesn't even come out of the little bottle. I mean, it's just a nightmare for me. So I just have stopped trying. And so this glue is a welcome addition to my craft supplies, believe me. So now I'm just taking that created panel and I'm just carefully putting tape all across the back. And I did give this a few minutes for the glue to set up so that my little cameras wouldn't be shifting around or anything. And then I'm just going to put it down on a card base. If I can find one, there we go. This one's a top folding. And just so you know, every single card I'm making in this video and coming up in part 2, they are all the same A2 size. That is my preferred card size, and I just always make that size. All right, and there we go. I really like how this turned out. So that is card number 2. So for card number 3, I am taking another piece. Actually, let me see, have I used it yet? I don't think so. This might be, it is, yes, it's the Tim Holtz watercolor paper right there. And so what I did is I just took some of those image stamps from the set. It's the palette, the paintbrush, the paint tube, and then the little pen. But I just made a little cluster with them and stamped them in sticky ink, and now I'm clear heat embossing again. And I just went ahead and repeated that stamping over and over, just turning my stamping block so I get a real nice little kind of free-form looking collage of images. So now I have this carefully taped down to my wood board that I use for watercoloring, and I'm going to take that little set of the Daniel Smith colors, and I'm using the aqua brush from the card kit, And you can see that I'm just being extremely loose, very unplanned, just really trying to get color down on that paper. So I'm starting off with the more olive green. Now I'm coming in with that pretty, I kind of call that one a pine green. I think it's a blue, but anyway, it's very lovely. So here comes the lovely golden color. And I'm kind of trying to think about putting certain colors next to each other, especially now that I'm bringing in the red, because the red is going to mix really nicely with the gold, but it's not going to play so well with the greens. I don't want to end up making brown. So I'm really trying to keep that in mind as I'm laying color down. And I'm being pretty generous because I want a lot of pigment. And I'm going to clean up some of the extra color. And taking my large squirt bottle, I'm just really going to give that panel a nice soak. So I let it dry, and really it didn't take very long, but I wanted to make sure it was 100% dry before I started messing with it. And now I'm just carefully peeling away my tape. And if you take your time with this, you shouldn't have any paper tearing. Now I have a little piece of the banana cardstock, and I'm taking my Sook Wang double-sided tape, and I'm going to cover the back side of that painted panel. And I like using this much adhesive to help correct any warping that may have happened to the paper. And you can see I also trimmed away the white edges of that panel. And now for my sentiment, I'm using the You Make Everything Colorful sentiment from the card kit stamp set. And I treated the paper with my bag, my anti-static tool. Now I'm stamping it out. And again with the Hero Arts white embossing powder. Those are the only embossing powders I use throughout these cards as well. It's either going to be the Hero Arts white or the Ranger clear. And then I'm going to go back into the paint colors, and you can see that I trimmed down that little piece of banana cardstock quite a bit. And I'm just going to get some color down. Again, I'm being very loose with my painting. I just want the colors to kind of fade and blend into each other. And if you want a little more intensity in your color, just make sure that you let your piece dry between layers, and that way you can build up color if you're looking for more intensity. So now I've got another side folding card base, and I'm just going to go ahead and attach my painted panel down flat. And there is my sentiment, and you can see I put a little piece of white cardstock on the back side just to give it a little bit of a border. And since white is my accent on this card, I decided to just stay with that color. And I'm going to pop it up on a little piece of foam tape here, just so that the card isn't completely flat. And then just lay that down in the corner. So there is card number 3. So for card number 4, I took 2 more pieces of the pattern paper. This time it's that gorgeous floral and then a real pretty little polka dot paper. And I have a piece of the the burnt orange cardstock, and just using 2 different rectangle dies, I cut a frame, and I'm going to use that piece right there from the same piece of cardstock, and I'm taking the diagonal stripe stamp, and obviously I'm doing more heat embossing, And it's the first time I'm using the stamp, so I'm being very careful and making sure I get really nice coverage. And I'm using the entire length of the stamp as well, so I made sure the ink reached from one end to the other. And you can see that I used a paintbrush just to clean up some of the edges. If you feel like you can swipe away some extra pieces without just drawing your image, then that's a great way to clean up. Now I'm using the Hugs Enclosed sentiment from the stamp set and the little solid heart. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going in the center of the line, and I'm just going to stamp that sentiment and the hearts. And I'm covering it with the powder now so I can see where I'm going with my stamping. And I'm just going to repeat that. It's just going to be the sentiment, a heart, the sentiment, a heart, on and on, all along that edge. This is a nice way to use a sentiment that's kind of petite, like this one is. So if it seems too small, just go ahead and repeat it. And then your sentiment element on your card will have a lot more visual impact. So now I'm just going to go ahead and you can see I flipped it over, and I'm going to just repeat the exact same pattern on the other side of the diagonal stamping. And it's just a little bit offset, just for interest. And I'm going to clean up those bits again. That embossing powder is just so lovely because it is so bright white and it melts so beautifully, even on some very delicate lines. So I highly recommend the Hero Arts White if you haven't given it a try. So now I'm just going to, you can see I put that frame down around the edge of my card base, and I went ahead and just cut out the sentiment strip that I created. And now I am finally using those beautiful little crystals. And I'm just kind of using solid pink and the crystal clear and also the transparent pink crystals, just a nice mixture all across my card. And that is card number 4. So thank you for joining me for these first 4 cards, and video part 2 is coming very, very soon. So keep your eyes open for that and join me again. Thank you.